She was in pain, and that was my fault. I always misjudge my strength when I am upset, but the fact that I had her by the elbow while asking what the hell she was doing, that was hers. Sorry, I said, softening my grip and my tone, but I can't let you walk away. She took advantage and jerked free. Sure you can. Just pretend you didn't see anything. Her eyes narrowed. Why were you following me anyway? I didn't want to admit the truth. That is the intro, the very beginning of Rick Treon's book, Let the Guilty Pay. And welcome, Rick, to Blackbird Writers Presents Author Interviews.
Thanks for having me, Tracy. And that was really fun to hear you read that, because we thought maybe there was going to be an audiobook for Let the Guilty Pay, but there never was. So it was cool to hear somebody else reading it. I think that's the first time I've ever heard somebody else narrating the book. So very cool for me.
Cool. So you are the author. You are the author of several books about life and death in the Lone Star State. Your debut, Deep Background, won the Pencraft Award for Excellence in Suspense, and Let the Guilty Pay was a finalist for the 2021 Silver Falcon Award for Best Suspense. And also your thriller, Divided States, is currently a finalist for the 2022 Silver Falcon. Very exciting. And Let the Guilty Pay is the first book in the Bartholomew Beck mystery series. Beck, because he won't let anyone call him Bart, is an author whose past comes back to haunt him in this second starter. And I say that because you have the prequel novella, Live with the Truth, that's about the time before, that takes place before Let the Guilty Pay. So let's set the story up a little bit for your readers.
Yeah, so Beck is a true crime writer, and he kind of fell into his first true crime book in that he was a witness to the crime, and he even testified and helped put a man in jail for the murder of his neighbor. And this happened whenever he was a teen, still in high school. And then it became such an infamous murder that, he was contacted by publishers and agents and stuff. And, he was able to write sort of a first person, / third person true crime book about this, big infamous Texas murder. And, surprise, surprise, he wasn't, an actual writer before that. So by the time we meet him in that intro you read, he's working on a Texas oil pipeline, and that's how he's making his ends meet, because he never could recapture that magic from the first book, because, in theory, we hope he never saw any more murders. He was just writing true crime books about them. And so, the one thing that is, not a spoiler in this book is that, he lied about significant portions of that crime, and therefore the book and even his testimony on the stand. So he's got a big secret that he is constantly trying to protect. And then, not very long after the intro you read, somebody stages a body at his job site in the Texas Panhandle, and the manner of death is very similar to what was in his first book. So, he knows that somebody knows his secret, and so the rest of the book revolves around that.
Yeah, no, and I love the fact that that he was a writer for a while, but that wasn't paying off for him, and so those details really rung true for me.
Yeah.
But let's talk about this setting a lot, because that was an area that was not familiar to me. He was working on the oil pipeline, right?
Yes, and that's I've been asked this question a lot, and sometimes I lead off and tell people that I actually did work with an oil pipeline crew. My one of my best friends in the world, he is a pipeline welder. And I was sort of at a crossroads in life with my journalism career, because, things, as have not been going very well in that industry. And, he and I was thinking about my next book. I can't remember if I'd signed the contract yet for Deep Background, but, it was right about that time. And I was working on book 2, because that's what they say, to do, always start working on your next book. And I had a pretty good idea of the past timeline, which we'll get into later, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted Beck to be doing as a career, and I hadn't fully fleshed that out. And I was talking with Jesus, my friend, and he's like, you should set a book out, on the pipeline where I work. And I was like, not sure about that. And he's like, you could come out and work with me, and if nothing else, you'll make good enough money to, leave the current job that I was already thinking about leaving. And so, that was, okay, I could probably do that. I'm a kind of handy with tools. I'm definitely not, a trained craftsman like Jesus was. But it seemed like something I might be able to do. So we went down, and as the book explains, you take a test to get on a job site. And we did that, and I was there for probably like 10 minutes and realized that, this would be a really interesting setting. There's a lot of ways to kill people. And then whenever we got to the job site, it's like, oh yeah, there's a lot of ways to dispose of a body out here. You're in the middle of a pasture, 10 miles from town. So yeah, like the setting sort of lent itself to all the rest of it. And once I was out there, that helped kind of formulate both halves of this dual timeline story.
Yeah. And so you could tell that you had experience out there. That's why I didn't even ask, because the details were so like crisp, and I really understood, though I've never been in a situation or been out to a place like that. I knew from your writing that that's what it was all about.
And it definitely helped that my stories oftentimes are about reporters or sleuths of some kind doing that similar thing. So I was like, well, it was really easy for me to write a story about a writer who is coming out to work a manual labor job to make ends meet. That definitely there was a lot of not in terms of me being a murderer, but in terms of a lot of that, it was very autobiographical, and a lot of those details really came through. And there's a chance I'll never write a novel that is quite as good at doing that, unless I just decide to become Mike Rowe. Yeah, exactly. Unless I become Mike Rowe and just go out and try all these crazy jobs and then write novels about it. But I don't think that's very sustainable.
It doesn't seem. I don't know. It seems like too hard.
Yeah.
So Beck finds the body of a murdered woman, and we learned pretty quickly that 20 years ago, he might have helped to incarcerate an innocent man. In fact, he wrote. What was the name of his book?
Cold Summer.
Cold Summer, right? And published that. And so he was basically banking on this man's life and on his lie. Yeah,
and it's that I'm actually at VoucherCon. One of the panels I'm going to be on is characters with deadly secrets. So I was like, well, no wonder they chose me to be on the panel. But I definitely toyed around with how much to hide that and how early to reveal that. And then I realized that there wasn't going to be any pretending that Beck was a hero. Like, this was noir, and I don't often read books that have true heroes, and I tried to write one, and that just was not I found my author voice maybe, but writing that kind of character just wasn't me. And I don't know what that says about me. I'm sure there are psychologists who can diagnose that. But the point is they're like, I had a lot of other stuff to hold back. So I decided early, okay, we're gonna go ahead and let the audience know that, this entire backstory of Beck is, based on lies, and that's how he lives his life. And that's one of the reasons why this job was actually very convenient for him, because when you're out there on a job site, you don't often talk about how you got there. I asked a few guys after I got to know them a little bit, because and they all knew that I was kind of doing research for the book in addition to out there working with Jesus. And Jesus was was a very popular guy in that world. So I was able to do some sort of character development interviews along with just doing the job every day. But I mean, there's no background checks. There's no, if you have a social security number that'll run through a system and a bank account where they can deposit money, you can work. You know, as long as you and your welder pass the test, and the welder can bring, you know, whoever they want. They can bring their best friend. They can bring their wife or girlfriend, which is popular. They can bring a stripper they met the night before. That's happened. You know, so they say, I mean, who knows who's lying to me? But I mean, you know, it's whoever you want, you think can do the job. You know, they bring them on, and like I said, as long as the numbers and they can deposit money, you know, it's all good with them as long as you can do the job. So if you are someone who has a secret, if you are someone who is running from your past, as you know, and you know, criminal record doesn't matter. And not that it should, you know, that's not my place to judge. But yeah, that's a convenient place for somebody with a dark past to come and to just be able to pay the bills and work and kind of live a low-key life until somebody comes and upsets that apple cart.
Right. And what a great setup for a murder mystery book.
Yeah, no, like I said, whenever I got out there and started working with ASUS, I realized that, you know, yeah, like not only am I going to be able to, you know, pay my bills and store some money if I want to give this writing thing a real go, but yeah, like he was right. This is a really interesting place, and it was interesting.
But the people were really interesting too.
Exactly, and there's no characters other than you know, Jorge. You know, he pretty much is Jesus. I mean, I wasn't, you know, I didn't do a whole lot of changing of that character, but you know, everybody else out there were bits and pieces. And you know, the science and the work was all very real, and it was seen through the eyes of somebody who has not been in that world a lot. And I thought that, you know, that was a good way to approach it, since most of the people who are reading the book, you know, bookish people usually don't do that kind of job. So it was a little bit of a fish out of a water story that was wrapped up in a you know, suspense murder mystery.
Right. It was great. And the other thing you do really well in this is that you're weaving the past and present in this book using Beck's Cold Summer book. So there's like all these little excerpts of his book throughout there that kind of tell the past. So I was going to ask you more about like your writing process, and that when you are you, well, pantser or plotter, first of all?
I'm definitely in the middle. Planter, I think, is what I wrote on the blog post that I did for the Blackbirds not too long ago.
Right.
And that has sort of developed. You know, with Let the Guilty Pay, it was the second novel, you know, that I'd ever written. And the first one, like I say, you've got your whole life to write that one. And so, while I was actually working out on the pipeline, I was doing the edits and the proofreading for Deep Background. So I wasn't actually writing Let the Guilty Pay at that point. What I ended up doing was getting through that, and you know, my first signing for Deep Background was going to be a little bit before the release date, the Thanksgiving of 2019. And so I said, okay, we'll make, you know, a couple days before that'll be the last day I'm out there working, you know, because I would have been okay financially from, you know, all that time working out there, and the pay's good. And you know, I will have my book commitments after that. And so basically at that point, I had that book coming out is whenever I sat down to actually write Let the Guilty Pay. Although you can ask the guys I worked with, I was out there staring out at the horizon, writing it in my head, you know, as I was on my breaks during work and stuff. So
yeah,
that was all happening. You talked about the excerpts from Cold Summer that are going throughout the book. That literary device actually came to me right before I started writing. I was explaining, you know, how I had the story in my head to my father, who was interested because he is a blue collar guy and had worked out on pipelines and, you know, worked in power plants and done all that stuff now. Now he's in management. So he also, you know, reads and stuff like that. So he was a little bit of a fun audience for me to bounce ideas off of. And we were riding in the car, and I said, yeah, and you know, you can do fun things structure-wise. I know I want it to be on two timelines, but you know, you can do crazy things like the book that he wrote. Maybe there's excerpts, and maybe each one of those leads into, you know, whenever he goes back into the past, so the audience knows. And I was like, oh, that's actually a really good idea, and I ended up using that. So
yeah.
when I explain the structure of Let the Guilty Pay, it's often really funny because whenever I say it, it sounds like it should just be a dumpster fire of a story. Something an editor would read and go, nope, not even going to try that one. But you know, it's has a first person past timeline for Beck, and then it has a rotating cast of 3 characters who are third person past tense, who you rotate there in the past. And then before each time you dip into the past, you have these excerpts from Cold Summer. And, this isn't too big a spoiler, but as you read the excerpts, you realize that, he's not telling the truth as he's writing, because what he presented in the book gets, doesn't match up with what happens in the chapter after that.
Right.
So really you have, 3, 4, 5 narrators, and, you assume the ones in the past are the ones telling the truth, and that happens to be true. But you have 2 unreliable narrators. You have Beck as himself in the present, and then you have the Beck that wrote Cold Summer in the past. So like I said, like, to explain it, you're like, why am I even gonna try this? But one thing I think that was the secret to making it work for me was I wrote it from top to bottom, and during the editing, there's a little bit of shuffling around, but I didn't say, write, Cold Summer as its own book and then pick out pieces to go. I didn't write the present tense timeline separately from the past. I just started with a Word document and went straight down, so that each revelation, no matter what tense and who is narrating, built on the next. And so I think that helped it from getting too unwieldy.
Yeah.
And whenever I've told that to people, they're like, "That I couldn't have written it that way. I would have had to write each timeline and splice them together." And I listen to that and go, "That sounds like way too much work."
No, that's interesting, because I write the same way, like from the beginning of the story on, and then but there's at least some point for me anyway that what I have to go through, like if there's 2 timelines, and make sure that everything is linear throughout the story and what I'm writing. So checks and balances.
The biggest changes that were made from my original draft was I tried to make it very structured with each chapter rotating and stuff like that. And obviously a finished product doesn't do that. And Tex Thompson is down here in the Southwest. She is a remarkable book doctor and developmental editor. And so I was at the Canadian River Valley Writers Conference up here locally, and part of the registration was she would do like a full read and a 1-hour discussion on your project. So we did that, and the 2 major things that she changed, one, she said, don't worry about it being so kind of binary like that. Like, go with the present tense story as far as you can until you have to start revealing stuff in the past, and do it that way. And then also we combined 2 characters, which a lot of early drafts need that. That's very common. So she pointed that out, and then we figured that out in the room as we were talking, and so that was another big one. And as soon as I made those changes, then it really started to read and to feel like a novel that was going to be in bookstores. And so that was always a fun feeling.
I think that's a great thing for readers and other authors to know too, because I think that a lot of people think that you just like put this idea on page and then you get it published, and you always need more eyes on it. It always needs more work. There's always several drafts of the book, and so that's a good thing for everyone to know. So what other kind of research is needed for your thrillers?
So that one didn't need much other research than my on the job training, but most of my other thrillers, a lot of them have like I said, have reporters and such that populate the characters. So a lot of that research has already been done, but there's definitely a lot of internet research, I would say, and especially during the pandemic, whenever I was writing my last 2 novels, like that was basically the only research I was able to do. But you have Google Earth and Street View and all that stuff, so you can really go to these places now. And the internet is
virtual tours, and
for locations you've never been to. And the most research intensive thriller I wrote was actually Divided States, which has no reporters, and they're police and military, and I was also sort of making up a world as I went, and I still used Google Earth for locations, like places that I've driven through and been to, but it's like, okay, I need to really make sure that I have everything exactly where it would be, including little playa lakes and stuff like that out on the plains. So, but no, that one took quite a lot of research into the organization of the different tier one military organizations that of, SEAL Team 6, Delta, and then the others that you don't read about or know about very much. So that actually took quite a bit of research, and then also talking to veterans, and then reaching out to people who I have some friends now who were former intelligence officers, so I can run little bits of that by them, sort of plot points and how they reference each other and things like that. So yeah, that was the most research intensive novel for sure.
Yeah.
Other than breaking my back working out there on the pipeline.
Yeah. So we've talked about the editing process a little bit too, and you're also an editor and publisher at Blue Handle Publishing. How are your writing and work lives intertwined?
Well, I'll tell you what, it actually has been a little bit of a struggle for me to separate the two. And I wasn't sure how it was going to be whenever I was hired, because I always help people out with the editing, and I was in critique groups, and I generally was the comma queen in those critique groups, because line editing is just something, that I naturally do. Like, it's hard for me to read copy and not see that stuff and, fix it. I can do it really fast. So I was doing it, in a critique group, they're reading out loud and as they were doing it. So it's not like it was, hurting anything. And, my critique partners always really liked it. And then they said, hey, this other thing, that's about to be published, will you look at this passage, or will you help me out with this? Whenever I started to do it professionally, because I realized that, enough people were telling me, hey, you should get paid to do this. Like, I quit fighting it. But, being in that mode, it's hard to then shut that off and then get a draft out and write creatively. And so I was working on a novel. There are a lot of reasons why I won't finish it, and I tried to turn it into a TV pilot. So we'll see how that works, because that medium seems to me to be easier for me to write someone who's more of a hero, because I'm used to watching that on television and in movies. That's because that is more commercial. I won't pull myself into thinking that the style of novels that I write, there's one or two a year that really rise up and are major successes. But for the most part, people, the mass public wants to read a Jack Reacher. They want to read about someone heroic doing heroic things. And, whenever I sit down to write prose, that's not what comes out. So I figured that out, which is good. Definitely didn't waste my time working on that. But the other major struggle was sitting down every day, having written something, and not going back and fixing everything that I've written and then trying to write again. And, sometimes that can be helpful depending on what your stage you're in. But if you're trying to get the first draft of a novel down, it just can make things cripplingly slow. And so I think I'm starting to figure out again. I took a break from trying to write prose and do screenplay stuff and do, like pitches for, Hollywood and that sort of thing, which is a very different skill in its own. And so I think I kind of got out of my own head by doing that. And I just finished a short story for the Texas High Plains anthology that I do every year in my local writing club. And that, felt good. It came out, okay. And I set it down, and I'll go back and do the edits now. So hopefully here pretty soon, I'll start working on another novel length piece. But yeah, it was very different trying to separate out editor Ricky from writer Ricky. And, I've been able to do it on my own stuff before, but that's a very different animal from taking and doing it, for hours and hours a day on somebody else's work, and then trying to create your own stuff and not being in the middle of a sentence going, nope, that's passive voice, or like, oh no, that's should you be in that tense, or whatever it is. So but I think I'm starting to figure it out, which is nice, because I was starting to worry I may never write another novel again, but
Oh no.
I don't feel like that's going to happen. That's I think I was kind of working my way through it.
Oh, good. Well, good, because we want to hear more novels are coming from you, Rick. And so you don't have anything coming out soon, it sounds like.
No, I don't.
Okay.
And I hope the thriller writers don't say, "Hey, you've gone too long without writing a book. We're gonna take away your membership." But I mean,
No.
I mean, who knows? But the important thing is that I finally feel good about my own writing as opposed to just working on other people's. But I really enjoy that. I found that I truly enjoy, and I did whenever I was editor at newspapers too, taking somebody else's story and having sharing a vision with whoever's writing it and helping make it the best it can be. Like that also really brings me a lot of joy. So it's nice to know that whatever path I end up going down 5, 10, 20 years from now, I have two really good options to fulfill me creatively and professionally. So that's always nice to know.
Yeah, that's great. So tell readers and listeners where they can find you and your books.
RickTreon.com. The homepage kind of has links to all my books and to I have a video course on writing fast-paced plots on Book Puma Online, which is an offshoot of the company where I work. So people can sign up for that. Has all my social links. So hopefully I've made it pretty easy. Just one website, and you can find me however you like to consume your online content.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today, and we'll see you around.
Thanks, Tracy. I really appreciate it.
No worries.